Welcome to Rauta, and this time totally something different than extreme metal. We're talking here about Nightwish and their 11th album, including the score version of Imaginarium, and this one is Yesterwynde. Kind of a weird wordplay, not real word as much as I could figure, but nonetheless it is very much fitting for the artistic style and the beautiful classic style of what Nightwish has been doing throughout the years. Now, if people are wondering what the hell bands like Nightwish are doing on Rauta, well, there is a story to be told, and that one has a lot to do with the very fact that I'm a long-time Therion fan, and their symphonic metal with their opera vocals and all whatnot made an impact on me back in the mid-90s. So it took a few years when I really kind of discovered Nightwish, first ignoring it throughout the early years, but when I found out that actually they are a little bit of the same genre, with, combining symphonic elements to opera vocals and metal. And I figured, okay, this is actually my thing. It was a colleague of mine who pushed me the Once album and showed me that, hey, you probably are gonna like this. Whatever you were thinking before this one, check it out. And that's what I did. And found out exactly Nightwish is indeed my cup of tea. And throughout the years, I've seen the band a few times on bigger stages, and they do it wonderful ways. I mean, it's a beautiful band with its very symphonic elements, and as guitar works, metal, all that stuff. Very bombastic, big orchestra. So there's a reason why band has grown big since they started in 1996, when they were a little bit different. And probably none of them could really figure out what the band was going to be later years. But despite the lineup changes with the main vocalists a couple of times, Tarja Turunen and Anette Olson, the band has maintained their style, maintained their cores and all that, and been able to do what they do best. The symphonic metal with those opera vocals, or a little bit different, and let the band evolve, progress, go to different directions and cross some boundaries and all that stuff. And I think it's beautiful. There's so many things I could really talk about, but I don't want to make this 30 minutes of a video, so let's focus on the album Yesterwynde here. Now, before that, look at the Metal Archive site and you will see the list of releases is quite extensive. However, there are lots of singles and compilations, so when you remove that or those from the whole list, it's not that vast really. I mean, there are plenty of releases like that, but if you go for main ones, you will see 11 albums, which is indeed quite a lot in less than 30 years. And then there are quite a few lives and all that stuff. But like I said, we're gonna focus on Yesterwynde and its 71 minutes of a story to be told. Now, I get it why this band is getting mixed reviews. Like here, as low as 51% on 3 reviews. That's not much really, but it kind of showcases that with Yesterwynde, the band is now on the crossroads. It's called crossroads of different styles, and I would really say the main reason for this is acquired taste. Acquired taste really means here that it's not so simple style. That's back in the days when you figured out, okay, these guys have talented female vocalists, they have lots of keyboards, they have guitar riffs which are more or less, nodding to traditions and all. But from the very basics of that idea, the band totally escaped and went for their own direction, and even surpassing a lot of other bands performing so-called symphonic metal. I mean, it really means different things for different bands, and Nightwish is a unique case in that sense. Surely you can make the comparisons to Therion, and they are, in many cases, very rightful, justified, whatever. But Nightwish still stands on its own. And because of that, it seems like Thomas Holbein and the mastermind behind the band, the keyboard player, decided to go even further, not stick with the albums like Once or the things that came right after that one with Anette Olson, which were kind of a poppy even. But yet later on, when Nightwish decided to take a step further, it was kind of escaping from its past and going to territories which were quite different. And of course, later on, you had drummer changes, you had Marko Hietala leaving the band, which kind of left a gap there with the male vocals and all. So the band has been changing all along, shedding its skin and, becoming a new version of it. We could nowadays rightfully say, in my opinion, that this is Nightwish 3.0. It's not the first version with Tarja Turunen, it's not the second version with Antti Olsson, Marko Hietala, and so on, but it's a different version. And some people find this really too confusing or too bombastic, too much things on one and the same plate. I get it. Trust me, I do. But the difference between me and those who didn't really understand what it is all about, well, the difference is soundtrack music. And for me, soundtrack music is something that I've always enjoyed. When I was not exactly little kid, but kid nonetheless, I really started digging whatever musicians were doing with the movies. I mean, think about the early Star Wars stuff. Think about the early Disney stuff. Think about all those Danny Elfman and John Williams and later Hans Zimmer's and all that stuff. What wonderful soundscapes they created. Magnificent composition with big orchestra and all that stuff. Now, obviously, Nightwish wanted to move towards that later on, incorporating more and more soundtrack elements. I bought my first soundtrack CDs back in the 90s, so I'm not a new guy to this style. And for such a reason, it was really easy for me to kind of, dive deep into the world and not find it confusing or weird or like they're abandoning their fans. I mean, I get it. After Imagineering or starting with that, things started to change for something bigger, something more majestic and something more acquired taste. Now, if you like classical music or you like soundtrack music, you're more likely to get whatever Nightwish are doing with Yesterwynde. But if you just want to stick to your basic symphonic metal, I mean, you probably will find this very, very confusing and filled with too much details and ideas that go on throughout the album. Now, the first stepping stone, and one of the foxholes in a way, not foxholes, but points where you're gonna bump into is the length. Over 70 minutes. It's just too much for a lot of people, especially when you have longer songs. Now, there are not too many of these longer songs. I'm talking about the 9-minute tracks with the second one or 8-minute tracks with the 5. You see these 4, 5, 6-minute tracks, which are nothing out of ordinary really throughout the album. And those are easy to get through. But what isn't really that easy to get through is those symphonic elements combining the soundtrack moments. That is, you put the classic Nightwish with the guitars and, different kind of traditional instruments on the top of soundtrack things. So it's almost like two worlds collide and then you kind of have to figure it out at once. Now, video gamers probably understand my what I'm trying to say here is that you kind of jump between two different worlds. There are plenty of video games that do that. I know, I'm a gamer. And this is much like that. You kind of jump between these two, but they are like on top of one another. They're like combined in rather seamless ways. But it doesn't seem like that seamless when you're not really accustomed to soundtrack music. And I get it. It can be too overwhelming. It can be just too much. And people might be saying, yeah, nothing really sticks in my mind. There are no memorable parts in that. I give that. That is very, very true in my opinion. There are the most songs, they're not really catchy. They're not poppy. They are just too much the soundtrack stuff and the classical music, which is not really known for, pop melodies and simple chorus parts and all that stuff. Now, there is one thing I consider a hit song, and it was released as a single, and it's the Day Of. There are almost these poppy moments with the basic verses, and when you go to the chorus part, you have the, kid choir and all. It is catchy. And as such, I kind of find it more boring. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a good song, but it's the kind of easy listening of this whole album. And as such, works as a single probably perfectly, and it's easy to start the thing going on with here. But the rest of the album, it's gonna challenge you. It's gonna challenge you big time. It means you're gonna have to figure out the details. You have to try to put your mind into the world of Nightwish, which is at the same time a background album, much like the soundtracks. It's not supposed to steal the show from the actors and whatnot. And yet you have things like Floor Jansen doing great vocals here, lots of guitars, and so you have like a lot of layers taking place at the same time. So you're actually watching like a movie and a metal music concert at the same time, and your brain is trying to put them together like, this is what I'm gonna focus on. And it's hard to focus when you're staring two screens at the same time. If you watch sports ever while doing something else with your iPads or whatever, or phones, you probably know what I'm talking about. Oh, there was a goal. I missed it. I'm gonna just have to go back in case you got to rewind. But I don't want you to rewind this kind of a music. So in my opinion, it doesn't matter if you let it go in the background and feel the whole atmosphere with the vocals, with the guitars, with the traditional instruments, and with those soundtrack pieces, because it can work like that. Then again, if you give it more focus, you can also enjoy those different details and layers, and like, wow, how they are able to keep it together. Now, I'm gonna say it out loud though. It isn't 10 out of 10 album. And why so? Because it is too complicated, and it's missing those instant riffs, instant memorable parts, and all of that stuff. So when you're looking for something that sticks in your brain, you want something more simplistic. And Yesterwynde is not that. And if you want that to become more than just a background music, well, it probably requires a lot of spins and a lot of time and all that stuff. Now, I gave this a few spins. I didn't really count how many, but for me, it was from the get-go. From the first spin, I realized I'm gonna like this. Will I like it more over the years? It is quite likely, but I can't tell at this point. Will it take me 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Will I be dead before I get to finally understand this album? Because they are these growers. Death Symbolic took me something like 25 years to figure out it's actually 10 out of 10 album. So there's that. But my point here is, with fantastic production, great understanding of soundtrack music and composition, whether it comes to guitars, drums, bass, traditional instruments, what have you, it's a really, really good album. And I think it's a grower. I find it very, very unlikely that this is going to be more boring, a letdown album over the years. More likely the other way around. But time will tell. I don't know at this point, but I do know it's a good album. And for me, if you want to know my review score, I would say it's 8 out of 10 at the very moment in 1st of October 2024. So we'll see where this stands in 5 or 10 years. Have my scoring changing? Has your scoring changed? Nobody knows. But I'm sure these songs will make great thing live. Especially when you have more room for layers and people are actually, focusing on the show. And maybe then those details will, make more sense. Or maybe this doesn't work live that well. Who knows? It remains to be seen. So far, Nightwish hasn't really disappointed me at all. And I found this more easily to approachable than the previous one. But then again, I didn't really give that much love and time and all. So hard to compare. So far, for me, it means this is a Nightwish album that you need to listen to if you ever like the band. And if you didn't, I don't know if this is gonna change it, because this is one of the most complicated works by Nightwish, and as such, it's not for everybody. Like I said, an acquired taste, but those who do like soundtrack music, classical music, lots of layers, lots of details, and lots of skill, production, understanding, and all, will like it. So, now you know what to do. Links are provided in the description box. And if you want to take a look at the interview I did with the guys a couple of years ago here when they played here in my home city, give it a go. It's linked to this review in the very, very ending, about right now or so. So give it a go and see what the guys had to say back in the days, and off you go. Bye-bye.